Hello, in this lesson we're going to look at finger picking. It's something I'm asked about an awful lot, and a lot of players, once they get past just strumming a few chords, start to think, well, is there something else I can do with this hand to make my playing more interesting and exciting, and just to move me on to something other than strumming? Well, first of all, it's probably a good idea to define our terms, because lots of people talk about finger picking, but they're talking about slightly different things. It could be picking something a bit more classical, like this. Now that doesn't really have any kind of regular pattern with this hand. I'm just picking out the notes as they are required for the piece. Sometimes people think of finger picking as playing a melody like this. Just one note at a time, picking the strings there. And finally, a lot of people think of finger picking as a rhythmic pattern like this. The truth is, when you start playing finger picking tunes, you'll probably do all of those at the same time. You know, you'll be playing a bit of a rhythmic one, then it'll break from that pattern and do something maybe more akin to that sort of classical piece I played. And then there'll be times when you're playing little single note runs. In this video, we're going to focus on getting a good, solid, rhythmic picking pattern or two under our fingers so that we can replace a strum with this pattern and perform a song finger-picked instead of strummed. Now, I've mentioned this before, but don't get carried away and use too many fingers, because one of the things we need to do to keep our rhythm going is to use our thumb to play two strings, the G string and the C string. Just have a go at doing that. Play G, C, G, C. That thumb is going to be the thing that kind of anchors our pattern, and it keeps us in time. It almost becomes our little built-in metronome. Now we're just going to use two fingers as well as our thumb. So let's try this. When you do that alternating thumb pattern, when you play the G string, use your second finger to play the first string, the A string. And I'm just holding down a C chord with my left hand. So I'm going to play thumb and second finger on the two, let's call them the two outside strings, the G and the A, the ones on the outside, and pluck them together. Then your thumb's going to do its alternating thing and move to the C string. So when we do that, use your index finger to play the second string. So now we're playing the two inside strings, the C and the E. So just try that for a while. Outside, inside, outside, inside. I'm using my second finger on the outside pair and my index finger when we do the inside pair, and my thumb is going back and forth between the G and the C. Now when you're practicing these, it's really important to keep the time even. So if you can't go really fast, don't try and do it that fast. Nice and slow and even. So far, we've had the thumb on its own. We've had the thumb joined by a finger at the same time. So now we're going to try putting a finger note in between the thumb notes. So we'll play with our thumb, then our finger. We're going to stick with this same outside-inside pattern, but instead of plucking the strings together, we're going to do one and then the other. Thumb on the fourth string, second finger on the first string. That's the outside two strings. Then we move to the inside two strings, and now we're going to use our index finger and go thumb, index. So let's just try that. Outside thumb finger, inside thumb finger. Now just then I was just letting my hand fall free, but earlier on you might have seen me resting my little finger on the surface of the uke. You can do either of those. People sort of are divided on this. Some people like to anchor their hand with a finger. If you do anchor with your little finger, of course, it takes the guesswork out of where are my fingers, because you know where your hand is, it's fixed in a position. On the other hand, if you're moving free like this, you can do other things such as move your hand up and down to get different tones. So some people like to have their hand moving around free. I tend to switch between the two depending on the song I'm playing. So try them both out. If you do anchor your little finger, you don't have to press hard, but you might notice I've not got a strap. Well, that little tiny bit of pressure from my little finger here is enough to support my ukulele. I'm not resting it on my leg, it's just against my chest, and I can now use my little finger to support the uke while I'm picking, because it's quite hard to pick holding the uke and get your hand in the right position. It tends to end up all sort of cramped up like this, so resting your little finger can help if you don't use a strap. Try that out. Another thing that we can look at is when we're doing it slow, it's perfectly possible to do it with your thumb and one finger. The problem with that is when we get the speed up, I have to go from that string to that string with my index finger, and it's a bit difficult to do cleanly. So stick with the two fingers. Even though it might seem a bit harder to begin with, it'll help you in the long run. So now we're going to move on to our first picking pattern. Now picking patterns are like strum patterns. They're exercises to help you play music, to help you fill up a bar of music with something, with a rhythm. But ultimately we need to be thinking about the rhythm more than the exercise. The exercise is just finger training. We need to listen to the rhythm that we're making, and that'll help us when we start to improvise with finger picking or come up with our own patterns. Here's our first pattern. It uses things we've already done. So if you hold down a C chord, we're going to do pinch, pinch. That's outside, inside, just like we did before. Pinch, pinch. That's on beat 1 and beat 2. 1, 2. Now we have beat 3 and 4 to fill up. Now we could just go 3, 4, but that's not very exciting. So we're going to move to the pattern that we learned where we went thumb, finger, thumb, finger. So what we do now is we go thumb, second finger on the outside pair, and thumb, finger on the inside pair of strings. Put those together and you get this. Count is 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. Have a little play at doing that with a chord, and if you start feeling comfortable with it, try changing chord. Every time you get to that first pinch of the outside two strings, that's your first beat. So you could maybe try and do one pass of the pattern on one chord and then another pass of the pattern on another chord, and then back to your first chord. So if your chords were C and F, say, you could go pinch, pinch, thumb, finger, change. Every time that pinch comes, that's a new chord. And maybe find a song that you already know that only has 2 or 3 chords in it, and see if you can play through the chord sequence of that song using this pattern. Sometimes you'll have to play more than one bar of a chord because some songs have 4 bars of C and 2 bars of F and 2 bars of C and things like that. So all you have to remember is every time you do that pinch on the outside 2 strings, you're starting a new bar. You might get something like this. Have a look at my 12-bar blues jam-alongs and maybe pick an easy key like C and see if you can play along, but instead of strumming, do that pattern. Now surprisingly, that pattern is used by a lot of players a lot of the time. When it gets up to a faster speed and when you start changing chord more often and adding little passing notes and things like that, it sounds like you're doing a lot more than you actually are. For example, I play Shimmy Like My Sister Kate, and the intro goes like this. Now that sounds really hard. Let me slow it down. Watch my right hand. I'm doing that same pattern, but I'm changing chords every half bar, and it starts to sound like a lot more is going on. And when that speed kicks in, it really does sound like there's a lot more going on than there really is. Now, of course, you can take the elements that we've just got and mix them up. So instead of going pinch, pinch, thumb, finger, how about going thumb, finger, pinch, pinch? Same elements, just the other way round. How about going thumb, finger, pinch, or pinch, thumb, pinch, thumb, finger. You could even drop the fingers out altogether and just do the thumb. So you could go thumb, 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 finger, or thumb, 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 finger, pinch. There aren't that many combinations of things. On any beat, you can have just the thumb, just the finger, or both together. Now that works in 4/4 time. What about 3/4 time, waltz time? Well, we can take those same elements and just use 3 of them. So we could go outside pinch, inside pinch, and then an outside thumb finger, and that's the end of a bar. You could also start on the inside pair and maybe go thumb finger on the inside, pinch the outside 2, and then pinch the outside 2 again. 1 and 2, 3, 1 and 2, 3. You can build up pretty much any time signature and any rhythm you want just using these simple little Lego bricks, if you like. Now, of course, there are lots of other ways of playing, and if you watch players who play fingerstyle ukulele, and you should, because it's nothing better than to watch players doing it in real life and see how they approach it. And people with different styles will have very different ways of doing it. I'm just showing you the way that I do it. Finally, chord inversions have a huge part to play in fingerstyle playing, and they're what make it sound like there's a lot more happening than there really is. If you know an A7 chord down here and you pick it, sounds great. But if you know a different position of an A7 chord, or another one, then when you're picking that chord, you not only have the choice of going, but you can do that. You can run them together. If you have 2 bars of A7, you could go, and there's extra movement, there are different notes popping out, because you're always playing the same strings in the same sequence, but this hand is changing the notes that fall on each string. So it's almost like you've mixed this pattern up, but you haven't, you've just moved the notes onto different strings. This hand keeps doing the same thing, but the audience, they think this hand's done something different. And this is the smoke and mirrors of fingerstyle ukulele playing. So have a go at some of the exercises for this. I've put them all down in tablature form. You can go to learntheukulele.co.uk and look for this video on the lessons page, and you'll find just above it a little link to download a PDF of the tablature of everything I've played in this video. And then take some songs that you know and see if you can pick them instead of strumming them. If you play with other people, nothing sounds better than one person strumming and one person picking. It's a really nice way to play with other people. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.